Hello and welcome to the Yashi Show podcast. My name is Yasmin Madani and my loved ones call me Yashi, and you can too. Welcome, listeners. I can't believe that we are already at episode 11. This morning, I decided to enjoy the lovely outdoors and the beautiful weather and was listening to the birds chirping in the background and just being present around the stunning flowers and trees. I remember thinking that I couldn't believe that we are already at episode 11, which is about self-love and why it's so necessary in our lives. And that background that I just shared with you about sitting in the beautiful outdoor setting earlier today and just soaking in the beautiful scenery and sounds, that was my way of practicing self-love, because being in nature is so calming and supports well-being without demanding anything in return. It's a form of care that doesn't require performance or achievement. I grew up as a kid often going to parks and picnics almost every weekend, I think, that I can remember when the weather was so nice, because my parents, and especially my father, really enjoyed the outdoors. And I'm only appreciative of this more now in my life because I understand more clearly what he loved about it and why it was such an important aspect of his daily life to go outside for a walk and be in nature to get fresh air and enjoy the scenery of the mountains and lakes. I do believe this was his own way of practicing self-love. Even as a young boy, he was most happiest when he went for bike rides in the outdoors. I remember him telling me this, and his face would light up. Those were his happy places, and the outdoors rejuvenated him and made him grateful and joyful. And today I can say that I share some of this joy just like he did, because I too try and make time for this meaningful experience as a way of practicing self-care and self-love. I can't believe that one of the most important things that I wished I had learned early on in my life, and that I'm so grateful that I'm learning about now in my life, is the importance of practicing self-love. I think this concept gets easily misunderstood because it sounds like something very selfish, but it's not. It's actually very necessary for a happy and healthy life. For myself, I think this thinking came from quietly watching and learning that value came from taking care of other people. It wasn't something that was getting directly said to me, but it kept showing up in small ways, such as being praised for being nice or helpful. And from a young age, girls are often praised for being nice, helpful, or selfless, sometimes due to cultural expectations and social conditioning to be the ones who give, and give. Over time, that message slowly sinks in, that I matter because I'm useful. I'm worthy because I'm needed. And caring for others isn't a bad thing. There can be beautiful experiences in taking care of others. It can be so meaningful. But when it becomes the only way we measure our worth, something gets lost. We forget that we have value even when we're taking a break or resting. We forget we have value even when we say no, even when we're not fixing, helping, or holding everything up. And all this is very relatable because I'm sure many of you might feel guilty about doing something for yourself because you only understand your worth when it comes from actions of doing and prioritizing for others. See, when we do this all the time and automatically, we don't know any different. So the concept of self-love becomes foreign to us and can even sound like it would be something selfish to think about behaving in this way. Self-love is about gently unlearning that idea. It's about realizing I don't have to earn my worth through exhaustion. I don't have to disappear to be deserving. I can care for others and still care for myself, not as an afterthought, not as a reward, but as something that I've been worthy of all along. And I love this, the fact that you are already worthy just by being you. See, self-love gets a bad reputation because it's often confused with self-absorption, but they're not the same thing. At its core, self-love means recognizing your own needs, recognizing your limits, and recognizing your worth, and treating yourself with the same basic care and respect that you'd offer to someone else you care about. That's very different from selfishness, which is about prioritizing yourself at the expense of others. Here's the key distinction: self-love is sustainable, and selfishness is extractive. And by that, I mean it's depleting or draining. Let me explain this. Taking care of yourself, such as resting, setting boundaries, protecting your mental health, that doesn't take away from others. What it does is it actually stabilizes you. It gives you the energy, patience, and clarity to show up in a real and consistent way. Selfishness does the opposite. It prioritizes your needs without regard for anyone else, often at their expense. So over time, that drains relationships instead of supporting them. Self-love maintains connection, and selfishness consumes it. Let's look at an example of a brother and sister, okay, named Noah and Emma, and this might be helpful. Noah is someone who learned to take care of himself in a steady way. He works a demanding job, so he sets a clear boundary with his family. He doesn't take work calls during dinner or late at night unless it's urgent. When Emma needs help, he doesn't ignore her. He responds when he's actually available and present. Because he protects his time and energy, he shows up calm, patient, and reliable when he does engage. Over time, Emma feels supported, not just because he's always available, but because when he's there, he's truly there. Now, imagine a different version of Noah. He either says yes to everything, even when he's overwhelmed, or he does the opposite. He becomes inconsistent, dismissive, or only engages when it suits him. Sometimes he agrees to help and then cancels last minute, or he's physically present but emotionally checked out. In that pattern, Emma starts to feel unsettled and emotionally drained because the connection feels unreliable and inconsistent. In the first version, self-love creates consistency and trust. In the second, the lack of balance makes the relationship feel depleting instead of supportive. Next, let's look at why self-love includes boundaries and selfishness ignores them. Saying no when someone harms you or something harms you isn't selfish. It's responsible. Without boundaries, people burn out, grow resentful, or lose their sense of self. Healthy relationships depend on both people having limits. For example, imagine a son whose parents rely on him for everything: financial help, constant visits, solving every problem. He feels guilty for saying no, so he keeps showing up even when it's affecting his own health, his work, and his relationships. Over time, he becomes exhausted and quietly resentful. A self-loving response might sound like, "Mom and Dad, I care about you both and I want to support you, but I can't be available all the time. Let's figure out a way I can help that also works for me." He's setting a limit without withdrawing love. Remember, boundaries don't mean that you're abandoning your family and friends. They mean you're showing up in a way that's honest, sustainable, and respectful to everyone involved. But let's take this example a step further. What if his family doesn't respect his wishes or his needs? Instead of understanding, they push back. They guilt him. They say things like, after everything we've done for you, or you're being selfish. The expectation is that he keeps giving without question, without balance, without mutual respect. This is where self-love gets harder and becomes even more important, because maintaining a boundary isn't just about saying it once, it's about holding it even when it's uncomfortable, even when people don't like it. He may have to repeat himself, step back more, or accept that he can't control how his parents react. It doesn't mean he doesn't love his family. It means he is no longer measuring that love by how much he sacrifices himself. And sometimes the real turning point is this: recognizing that healthy relationships require mutual respect. If only one person is expected to keep giving and giving, it won't last, and it's not truly supportive, no matter how you frame it. Because when giving only flows in one direction, the relationship can start to feel transactional, like your value is measured by what you provide rather than who you are, like care has conditions attached to it. And over time, that feeling wears on you, not just physically, but emotionally too. It stops feeling like connection and starts feeling like an obligation. And when you go into this deeper, into cultural aspects, and look at this in this context, self-love might look like redefining what respect means. So for a lot of people, respect in the family has been defined as obedience, saying yes, not questioning, putting your needs last to keep the peace. But self-love asks you to expand that definition. Respect can also mean honesty, being able to say, this doesn't work for me, or I need something different, without seeing that as betrayal. It can mean sustainability, showing up for your family in ways you can actually maintain without burning out, without losing yourself, because care that comes from exhaustion eventually turns into resentment, even if you don't want it to. And it can mean mutual care, not just you understanding their needs, but them learning to understand yours too. Not just sacrifice flowing one way, but consideration going both ways. Redefining respect doesn't mean rejecting your family or your culture. It means making space for a version of connection that includes you in it, where love isn't proven by how much you give up, but by how honestly and sustainably that you stay connected. Okay, moving on, I want to look at a few more things that go deeper into self-love here. So self-love supports connection, and selfishness damages it. So when you care for yourself, you're more emotionally available and consistent. That strengthens relationships rather than weakening them. A simple way to think about this is kind of like this. You're not taking something away from others by caring for yourself. Rather, what you're doing is making sure you have something real to give. And if anything, a lack of self-love can lead to people-pleasing, resentment, or emotional exhaustion, which I know too well personally, and which ends up hurting both you and the people around you more than taking care of yourself ever would, because the people around you that really care about you want you to take care of yourself. Let's look at an example, okay? Imagine two close sisters, Maya and Lily. Maya is always the reliable one, the listener, the helper, the one who drops everything when Lily is stressed. Late night calls, last minute favors, emotional support. She never says no. At first, it feels like love. Maya tells herself, This is what being a good sister looks like. But over time, things seem to change. Maya starts feeling drained. She's losing sleep, falling behind on her own responsibilities, and quietly building resentment. Still, she doesn't say anything. She keeps showing up in the same way, hoping Lily will notice and ease up. But Lily doesn't, because Maya has never shown her that there's a limit. One day, Lily calls again, upset about something small, and this time Maya snaps. Her response is sharp, impatient, and colder than she intends. Lily is caught off guard, hurt and confused. To her, it feels like Maya changed overnight. But she didn't. The exhaustion had been building for a long time. Now the relationship feels tense. Lily feels pushed away. Maya feels guilty for reacting that way, but also frustrated that it got to this point at all. If Maya had practiced self-love earlier, it might have looked different. Maybe she would have said, I care about you, Lily, but I can't talk tonight. I need to rest. Or, I want to support you, Lily, but I can't always be available last minute. Those small boundaries wouldn't have taken love away from Lily. They would have protected it, because without them, Maya wasn't giving from a full place. She was giving from depletion. And eventually, that doesn't just hurt her, it spills into the relationship with her and Lily. And Lily would also learn that Maya is not an endless resource and that also has some of her own needs too. And then that would bring some awareness to both sisters. I also want to provide you with some helpful tools. Okay, so let's look at how to practice self-love in a way that stays balanced and doesn't tip into self-centeredness. This is where people kind of can get tripped up, because practicing self-love is less about doing whatever feels good, and it's more about building a steady, respectful relationship with yourself. Here's how to keep it healthy and balanced. First of all, treat yourself like you're someone you're responsible for, not just someone you want to indulge. That means doing things that are good for you long term, even when they're inconvenient. So, like getting enough sleep, following through on commitments, or addressing problems instead of avoiding them. Next, remember to use boundaries and not walls. A boundary is something that protects your well-being while still leaving space for connection. It's clear, calm, and grounded. It says, this is what I can and can't do, without shutting the relationship down. For example, I can't help tonight. I need to rest. The connection is still there, but so is your limit. A wall is different. A wall shuts down connection entirely. It often comes from overwhelm, hurt, or mistrust. It can sound like, I don't owe anyone anything, which removes not just the expectations, but sometimes that sense of shared responsibility that relationships are built on. Depending on context, it can create distance instead of clarity. The key difference is this: boundaries are about regulation, not rejection. They help you stay in the relationship without losing yourself. They might sound like, I can't do this, but I can do that, or this works for me and this doesn't. There's still flexibility, there's still care, but also honesty about limits. At the same time, it's important to recognize that not all relationships are the same. In safe, healthy relationships, boundaries help maintain closeness and respect. But in relationships that are harmful, controlling, or emotionally unsafe, boundaries often need to be firmer and restated frequently. They may require more distance and less access. And in those situations, what looks like a wall from the outside may actually be something else entirely, more like a protective boundary. Not emotional shutdown, but rather emotional safety. It's not rejection, but it's self-protection. The goal isn't always closeness, it's safety, its respect, and its emotional well being. When you're trying to tell the difference between self love and selfishness, one helpful reflection is to look at impact, not just how something feels for you, but how it affects the people around you. So, a simple question can help. Does this choice respect both me and the people around me? Self love usually creates balance. It might inconvenience someone in the moment, but it doesn't harm or disregard them. For example, saying, I can't help today, I need to rest, that might disappoint someone, but it's an honest and respectful response to both sides. You're not abandoning responsibility, but you're setting a limit that keeps you well enough so that you can show up in the future. Selfishness, on the other hand, tends to ignore impact entirely. It prioritizes personal comfort or gain without considering how it affects others, especially when care or fairness is expected in the relationship. Over time, this can lead to imbalance, resentment, or disconnection. At the same time, it's important to be careful with this impact test because not every discomfort that someone else feels means that you've done something wrong. So sometimes people may feel disappointed or resistant simply because they're adjusting to your boundaries. That reaction doesn't automatically mean the boundary is harmful. It just may mean that it's new to them and it's going to take some time to get comfortable with it. And this is a great moment in the episode today to pause for some self reflection. If you have your journal with you, you might want to take a minute here and just pause. Think of a time when you had to disappoint someone in order to take care of yourself. Maybe you set a boundary. Maybe you said no, or you chose your own need over someone else's expectation. What was that experience like for you for the first few times that you did it? Did you feel nervous or afraid? Did you worry about how the other person would react? What thoughts came up in your mind in that moment? And if this feels unfamiliar to you, and if you're in a relationship where even the idea of setting a boundary feels difficult or unsafe because of fear of judgment, disappointment, or losing approval, I want you to take a moment to gently reflect on that too. Ask yourself, what is making me feel so afraid to have these conversations? What do I believe might happen if I express my needs? And what does it say about how I see my worth in this relationship? Remember, there are no right or wrong answers here. This is simply an opportunity to become more aware of your patterns, your fears, and what might be shaping the way you show up in your relationships. So go ahead, take this pause if you'd like to journal, and then you can come back and join right here. So let's recap. Self-love considers impact, but it doesn't sacrifice your well-being to avoid discomfort in others. It aims for balance, not perfection. If a choice consistently leads to harm, control, or disregard for others, it's worth reflecting on that. But if it simply creates temporary discomfort while maintaining respect on both sides, it may actually be a healthy boundary taking shape. Next, don't confuse comfort with care. Sometimes self-love is just rest, and sometimes it's discipline. Both matter, but they are not the same thing. Comfort is what helps you recover in the moment. It soothes you. It gives you relief. For example, if you're binge watching a show after a long day, or sleeping in, or stepping away from stress for a while, there's nothing wrong with that. It can be necessary and healthy. But care goes deeper. Care is what helps you build a life that you feels stable for you and that it's aligned over time. It's not always easy in the moment, but it supports your long-term well-being. For example, think about a difficult conversation that you've been avoiding. Maybe it's with a friend who keeps crossing a line, or a family member who makes hurtful comments, or a partner where something has been sitting unspoken for too long. Avoiding it feels comfortable in the short term. There's no tension, no awkwardness, no emotional risk. You can distract yourself and keep the peace. But underneath that temporary discomfort, the issue doesn't disappear, it builds. You start feeling drained, resentful, or disconnected, even if nothing has officially been said. Care in this case is choosing to speak up. It might sound like, I need to talk about something that's been bothering me, or when this happens, I feel hurt and I need it to change. It's uncomfortable. Your voice might shake. The other person might react defensively. You might wish you hadn't started. But that discomfort is part of protecting something important, the honesty in the relationship and your own emotional well-being. Self-love includes both. It knows when you need rest, and it also knows when you need truth. If it only feels easy most of the time, then you're leaning maybe too far into the comfort part and away from the growth part. True care sometimes asks more of you, but it's still rooted in respect for yourself, not self-punishment or self-neglect. This next one is really important, and that is to stay accountable. A big part of self-love is learning how to stay honest with yourself, not in a harsh or critical way, but in a grounded, responsible way. Self-love doesn't mean believing you're perfect as you are. It means recognizing that you're always growing. It sounds like, I made a mistake and I'm still worthy, but I also need to learn from this. That mindset is important because it keeps self-love from turning into avoidance or entitlement. Without accountability, it becomes easy to justify everything you do in the name of accepting yourself, even when your actions hurt others or don't align with who you want to be. For example, if you cancel plans repeatedly with a friend, self-respect doesn't mean saying, this is just who I am, take it or leave it. It might sound more like, I realize I've been unreliable, and I understand that affects you. I want to do better, and I need to be more intentional about how I commit my time. Accountability doesn't mean self-shame. It doesn't mean being hard on yourself or questioning your worth every time you make a mistake. It means staying connected to reality, seeing your impact, owning your part, and choosing to grow from it. At its core, accountability is actually a form of self-love because it treats you as capable of change, someone worth improving, not someone who has to stay stuck in the same patterns forever. And finally, I want you to remember to keep empathy in the loop. A common misunderstanding about self-love is that it means focusing only on yourself and turning everyone else out. But healthy self-worth doesn't remove empathy, it actually makes it more stable. You can prioritize your needs and still consider how your choices affect others. Those two things are not opposites. In fact, when you feel secure in yourself, you're less likely to act from guilt, fear, or over-responsibility. That makes it easier to respond to others with clarity instead of resentment. For example, let's say you're invited to a family gathering, but you're emotionally and physically exhausted. In the past, you might have said yes automatically, even while feeling drained, and just doing it because you feel obligated. Then you show up feeling somewhat resentful or maybe even withdrawn. With self-love and empathy together, your response might sound like, I won't be able to come this time because I need to rest. But I hope you all have a great time, and I'd love to catch up another day. Here, you're not ignoring your own needs, and you're not ignoring their feelings either. You're acknowledging both. There's honesty, care, and respect without self-abandonment. Empathy is in self-love doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means staying aware that your choices affect others while still recognizing that you are not responsible for managing everyone's emotions at the cost of your own well-being. When both self-respect and empathy are present, relationships tend to become clearer, calmer, and more sustainable. So, just to kind of quickly summarize what we've discussed today, and it's been a lot, remember self love is not selfish, it is necessary. It is the foundation that allows you to show up in your life and relationships with clarity, steadiness, and sincerity. When you care for yourself, you are not taking away from others. You are ensuring that what you offer comes from fullness, not depletion. Self love includes rest and discipline, boundaries and empathy, accountability and compassion. It means understanding your worth without needing to earn it through constant giving or self sacrifice. And it means recognizing that saying no when needed or choosing yourself in healthy ways is not a rejection of others. It's a commitment to being present, balanced, and whole. In the end, self-love is what makes genuine connection possible because you can't sustainably be pouring into others from an empty place. I hope this episode has been helpful and gave you something meaningful to take with you. More than anything, I hope it offered a few simple tools and reflections you can use as you continue building self-love, and with it, a deeper sense of self-worth. Take what resonates with you and consider applying it in ways that feel manageable and supportive in your life. Okay, listeners, this is an important note here. I can't believe it, but we have our last episode for season 1, which will come out next week. So make sure you join me and tune in for that. In the meantime, I want you to definitely make sure that you're following on Instagram and Facebook, and also subscribing and following on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Thank you all. Catch me for my final episode of season 1 next week. And remember, my name is Yashi, and I believe in you. Hope you'll join me again next week on The Yashi Show. Until then, be kind to others, and also remember to be kind to yourself.